Hispanics make up the largest minority group in the United States with the largest subgroup and have three main racial backgrounds: white, black, and Native American. Americans depend on their extended families the way Hispanics look to their communities. These communities are tightly knit, and this influences recreational, educational, and other social activities within the ethnic group. This includes Hispanic families encouraging each other to hold large social events, where frequently at these events an overabundance of traditional foods is served. Hispanics also rely on each other for educational purposes when immigrating into the United States, due to the language barrier and needing mentors to aid in their transition. Church also plays a part in Hispanic activities, with Hispanics 64% more likely to attend church on a regular basis in comparison to the average American, attending 40% of the time. Related to leisure time, Hispanic leisure time ranks among the lowest in total leisure time available. American Hispanic culture came to be through people who were conquered by Spaniards, thus acquiring the Spanish language, entering the United States, bringing traditions and culture from Mexico, Spain, Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and other Latin American and Iberian nations into the United States. Once introduced into the American culture, differences made between the two, with the American culture centered on independence and individualism, while the Hispanic culture values independence and collectivism. This has an effect with every successive generation due to assimilation and acculturation between the two cultural values. This can be seen in Hispanic elderly who immigrated from their native country, living in a society that upholds values differing greatly from where they were born. Today's modern Hispanic culture remains focused on seeking the elderly for advice and family-centered values. But young Hispanics who are being raised in the United States are more likely to align their values with U.S. culture, which emphasizes personal independence. Most Hispanic parents speak Spanish in the home, and those who are foreign-born emphasize the greatest desire to teach their children the Spanish language in the United States. But with every successive generation, desire to educate their children in Spanish at home becomes less and less, which would mean that the second generation would be less likely to speak Spanish than the first, and the third generation would be less likely to speak Spanish compared to the second generation. Hispanics' interactions with those of their same culture are centered on a community connection. Their loyalty to extended family is more important than their individual needs, and they require guidance, encouragement, and direction through this. But although this is a strong motivator for disease self-management, it makes independent decisions difficult for Hispanic patients when it interferes with the extended family. Hispanic interactions related to healthcare involves their cultural beliefs in fatalismo and personalismo. Fatalismo is the belief that one cannot alter the disease process because it is part of their destiny, and personalismo is the expectation that a connection and personal relationship will be made with the healthcare provider. This makes healthcare provider selection more focused and engaged in close physical contact and exhibiting a genuine interest in their life.
And I will be talking to you first about the cultural health beliefs and practices for this. And in general, Hispanics are pretty much self-sufficient when it comes to healthcare. Hispanic women are used to being told what to do, and so in terms of healthcare, they are much less involved in their own healthcare as other women in other cultures, and this is because of strong paternalism within their familial systems. Traditional beliefs are based on the practice of home remedies. They believe in home remedies and get very little medical intervention. They believe in independence when it comes to healthcare and are not as inclined to go to a doctor as we are in American culture. Not only do they use these home remedies, but they believe that religion is actually the basis for diseases. They believe that prayer can help cure diseases. When we care for a Hispanic patient, these are items that we need to be taking into account because we want to make sure to ask them what home remedies they're using and how they're using them and how much they believe that they are helping. This will help us as nurses care for these type of people on a daily basis, and this will help us do our jobs much better because I believe that we will get to know our patients better. So one of the biggest things that's important in these cultures is family. And because they're very family oriented, they always put family first. And great emphasis is placed on religious beliefs and the maintenance of health and the treatment of illness. Now, diet and exercise do not have a prominent place in the daily activities of these families. I took a Guatemala trip my senior year of high school, and one of the things that I noticed was how family oriented they are and how together they are and how that really helps with care. And I got a chance to witness some of that, and it was very interesting. The next thing that I will be talking to you about is religious belief and spirituality. Most households in Hispanic culture are Catholic. They're a very Catholic-oriented society. And they value their religion very much, and they definitely do their best to follow it. And also the unfortunate part is a lot of these incomes and a lot of these families they're low income, and they rely heavily on their religious beliefs to carry them throughout life. That's partly how they get through life. They have that deep spiritual connection with God. They also believe that when it comes to religion, if you're a good person here on earth and you follow God's laws, you'll be rewarded with health, and you'll also be rewarded with wealth. They also believe very much in miracles, and they are also huge believers in that they can still happen today. I noticed this as I was researching this, and as I was reading it, it was very interesting to me. So this is very much influenced in this culture. Life cycle events. So one of the biggest life cycle events is a quinceañera tradition. This is very common for girls who are turning 15 in Hispanic culture. And these kind of things are meant to not only celebrate like their coming of age, but this is also maturity into womanhood. And this is and Hispanics celebrate this very much because they believe that this is a very important part of their culture. And when it comes to death, they take death very seriously and they respect the dead. Some customs associated with death are things like mourning with an open casket service. Usually funeral services begin at least 1 to 2 days before the service itself. They have holy water sprinkled on the pastor, and that pastor is asked to pray for the deceased people. And a lot of this comes from their deeply rooted Christian beliefs.
Guys, next up we have the nutrition and the diet. Are there any restrictions, and what are the common practices? Let's get into it. Hispanic diet traditionally includes whole grain corn, vegetables, fruits, beans, rice, and lots of herbs and spices. Along with those wonderful flavors comes a strong emphasis on family within every meal. Each meal has to have people to share it with. Following nutrition, we have healthcare access and experience. Now, some 73% of Latino adults report having a usual place where they can seek medical help or advice, while 27% say that they have no usual healthcare provider. And in the general population, males and the young and the less educated are less likely to seek medical help and have a healthcare provider. Some 42% of Latinos who have no healthcare insurance usually lack a healthcare provider, compared with the 19% that are insured. Of those respondents, 23% have been reported to say that they have been mistreated with the healthcare they sought out. Now, 29% attribute the poor treatment due to their race and ethnicity, and 23% report that their accent and the manner in which they talked was attributed to their mistreatment when seeking out healthcare. Now, what is the potential conflict we could have with this specific ethnicity, and how can we overcome that obstacle? There is an obvious language barrier that needs to be taken into account when dealing with Hispanic patients. Now, in the context of a hospital or a medical clinic where medical terminology can be complicated and communication often takes place, this language barrier is present, and it presents a huge obstacle for Hispanic patients to want to seek healthcare and for medical professionals to effectively communicate with their Hispanic patients. In fact, compared with white Americans and African Americans, Latinos generally report feeling less listened to and understood by their doctors, and as well, less able to themselves understand what the doctor is telling them. And they're twice as likely to leave a doctor's office with unanswered questions. They are also far more likely than whites to feel that they are treated unfairly by their providers or by the medical healthcare system. Now, as professional nurses, as future professional nurses, we can advocate for this cultural group by providing translators to properly communicate with the patients and to be as welcoming as possible to create a family-like environment where Hispanics can feel comfortable reaching out for medical assistance.